These stories are entirely true. The names of those involved have been changed to protect the guilty and the innocent alike. Everything else is as it happened. The names of boats and crew cannot be divulged for obvious reasons. I hope you enjoy the story. The title of this story is A Pain in the Ass. One of the first jobs I got was on a 35-metre sailing boat. This was a ketch, so had two masts, the front one bigger than the back. I was employed as a deckhand, and I joined the boat in the marina in Valencia. We took the boat all the way across the Mediterranean to Turkey, and we did a 3-week trip with the owner and his family. Then we sailed the boat back to Spain. However, things didn't always go as planned, and this story is about the other deckhand on the boat. Let's call him Leroy. Leroy was a very amiable and friendly man from St. Vincent in the Caribbean. He had short cropped black hair and was extremely skinny and spoke with a broad Caribbean accent to the point of being difficult to comprehend or understand at times. Many times I didn't understand what he wanted from me, and for the whole time that I worked on the boat, he never actually got my name correct. He would always call me Sammy or Samuel. He would speak with a very high-pitched voice in a strong Caribbean accent and say things to me like, "Open your chamois, Sammy." Or at meal times he would say, "Take it away, it's getting warm and hot." Often when working on deck, he would exclaim, "Oh Lord, oh God," for no apparent reason. Coming back to Leroy's physical appearance, from a distance he looked like a 12-year-old boy, but in fact he was a 60-year-old man who had worked on this boat for I don't know how many years. He was a very simple individual who couldn't read well and didn't even have a bank account. Therefore, the captain and stewardess would keep his wages and give him money as and when he needed it. They also had stocked the freezer of the yacht with roti, one of his favourite Caribbean treats, which was like a basic Caribbean Cornish pasty. Our story begins at the end of the owner's trip in Turkey. Leroy and I had to keep the boat clean and assist the captain and owner in sailing the boat from place to place. We did all our jobs together on deck, and we shared a small cabin at the front of the boat. Because I was the youngest, I was on the top bunk and Leroy took the bottom bunk. As the days went on and we got nearer and nearer to the end of the owner's trip, Leroy started limping and spending longer and longer in his bunk. When I asked what the problem was, he told me that his hip was sore and hurting him a lot. I spoke to the captain about this because he often asked where Leroy was, but the captain thought that he was just getting homesick. He didn't really think anything was wrong with him, so didn't give it much credence. and didn't really worry about it. A day or two later, the pain got much worse for Leroy, and he wasn't able to help me on deck at all. After I finished my duties, I returned to our cabin where Leroy was having a shower. I hopped up onto my bunk and began reading a book to pass the time. When he had finished his shower and dried himself off, Leroy opened the door to the bathroom and stood in the doorway looking worried. Reaching down to his right bum cheek, he exclaimed, "It's bleeding!" He then proceeded to show me the blood on his fingers, looking rather concerned. When he exited the bathroom, I must admit I did a double take just to make sure that I was really seeing correctly. He was standing in the doorway to the bathroom completely bollock naked, and he had the biggest penis I have ever seen. It was bigger than my foot. Being a heterosexual male, I don't go around looking at penises, but I have to say I have seen one or two in my time, and this was a real whopper. It looked even bigger thanks to the relative tiny stature of his frame. So I was lying on my bed, completely shocked by what I was seeing. Leroy was rather upset by his bleeding bum cheek, and it certainly took a moment or two for me to decide what to do. I jumped down from my bunk and told Leroy to lay face down on his bed so I could inspect the problem area. As I looked closer, I could see that his right bum cheek was quite swollen and inflamed, and there was an area that looked like it was becoming infected. In order to show Leroy what the problem was, I took a photo of it on my mobile phone so he could clearly see the cause of the pain in the arse. "Go show the captain," Leroy instructed me. "I'm not showing the captain a picture of your arse," I replied. "If you want to show the captain your bum, you'll have to do it yourself." So with that, I got back into my bunk, but left my phone with Leroy, and after getting changed, he limped off to find the captain and show him the picture of the problem. It would turn out that he had an abscess on his right bum cheek and needed an operation. So when the guests returned home from Bodrum in Turkey, my fellow deckhand was taken to the local hospital to have the abscess removed. It's a good job too, because if left untreated, it could have killed him or at least made him very sick. 2 or 3 days later, Leroy returned to the vessel, and almost straight away we began our journey back across the Mediterranean to Valencia. Because Leroy had just had the operation and the wound was in a sensitive area, he decided that he didn't want the captain or the stewardess to clean it for him, so I should help him with that instead. So every day when I finished my watch, I had to get Leroy to lay down on his bunk so I could clean the wound and change the dressing. On top of that, after about a week, he informed me that the stitches needed to be removed, and lo and behold, that was my job too. However, it wasn't quite so simple as that, as there was also a plastic drain embedded into the wound, which also needed to be removed. I did my best to keep things clean and not cause Leroy too much pain, but he did find it quite uncomfortable when I removed the drain and disinfected the newly exposed flesh. Although I did some basic first aid in my initial yachting course, I'm certainly not a doctor or nurse, but I got the job done. By the time we arrived in Valencia, he was feeling much better about the pain in the arse, and we all could have a good laugh about the absurdity of life as a sailor. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, please hit the like button and also think about subscribing, and I'll see you next time.